You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
Hey everybody, Dave here. Have you ever wondered where your personal information is lurking online? Like many of you, I was concerned about my data being sold by data brokers. So I decided to try Delete Me. I have to say, Delete Me is a game changer. Within days of signing up, they started removing my personal information from hundreds of data brokers. I finally have peace of mind knowing my data privacy is protected. Delete Me's team does all the work for you with detailed reports, so you know exactly what's been done. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/N2K and use promo code N2K at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/N2K and enter code N2K at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/N2K, code N2K. The U.S. government disrupts China's Raptor Train botnet. A phishing campaign abuses GitHub repositories to distribute malware. Ransomware group Vanilla Tempest targets U.S. healthcare providers. Hackers demand $6 million for stolen airport data. The FCC opens applications for a $200 million cybersecurity grant program. Gray Noise Intelligence tracks mysterious online noise storms. Scammers threaten Walmart shoppers with arrest. CISA adds 5 critical items to its known exploited vulnerabilities list. The founder of Craigslist will donate $100 million to strengthen U.S. cybersecurity. Our guest today is Victoria Sampson, Chief Director at Secure World Foundation, talking about space security and stability. And cyber criminals fall prey to the very info stealers they rely on. It's Thursday, September 19th, 2024. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is your CyberWire Intel Briefing. Thanks for joining us once again. It is great to have you here with us. The U.S. government announced the disruption of a massive botnet, Raptor Train, created by Chinese state-sponsored hackers linked to the APT group Flax Typhoon. This botnet, active for 4 years, compromised 260,000 devices globally, including routers and IP cameras, through various vulnerabilities. At its peak in June 2023, it had over 60,000 active devices powered by a customized version of the Mirai malware, which enabled DDoS attacks and malware delivery. The FBI, along with international partners, took control of the botnet's infrastructure, issuing commands to disable the malware on compromised devices. The hackers attempted to thwart this operation with a DDoS attack, but it failed to stop the takedown. Authorities ensured that legitimate device functions weren't impacted during the operation. The botnet targeted critical sectors in the U.S. and Taiwan, including government and military. The takedown follows similar actions against other Chinese-linked botnets earlier this year. A phishing campaign is abusing GitHub repositories to distribute malware by exploiting legitimate GitHub notifications. Attackers open false issues on open-source projects, claiming a security vulnerability and directing users to a malicious site, github-scanner.com. This site mimics GitHub but tricks users into installing Windows malware. Users receive emails from legitimate GitHub servers, making the scam appear more credible. The phishing emails urge recipients to visit the malicious domain, where a fake CAPTCHA prompts them to run malware via a copied command. The malware, a Trojan called i6e.exe, is designed to evade detection and maintain persistence on infected systems. It contacts suspicious domains for further activity, many of which are now offline. GitHub users are warned to avoid following links from suspicious vulnerability alerts. Ransomware group Vanilla Tempest is targeting U.S. healthcare providers using the INC ransomware service, according to Microsoft. The group gained initial access through a bootloader infection passed from threat actor Storm 0494, allowing lateral movement and ransomware deployment. They used tools like the Supper backdoor, AnyDesk for remote access, and MegaSync for data exfiltration. In some cases, Vanilla Tempest may have skipped encryption, opting instead for extortion using stolen data. Active since 2021, Vanilla Tempest has attacked various sectors, including education and healthcare, using different ransomware like Black Cat and Quantum Locker. Their shift to INC ransomware, which supports double and triple extortion, signals a focus on faster payouts. Microsoft also noted similarities between Vanilla Tempest, also known as Vice Society, and Ricida, suggesting possible connections between the groups. Hackers behind the cyber attack on Seattle-Tacoma International Airport are demanding 100 bitcoins in ransom for stolen data. That's about $6 million. The attack, attributed to the ransomware group Ricida, disrupted CTAC's systems in August. Ricida has posted 8 files on its darknet site and claims to have over 3 terabytes of data. The Port of Seattle, which operates the airport, refuses to pay the ransom and is reviewing the stolen data. Some of the leaked information includes personal details such as passport scans and tax forms. The port is offering credit monitoring to affected individuals and continues its investigation. Despite the disruptions, which included handwritten boarding passes and delayed luggage, most systems have been restored. Port officials are working to strengthen cybersecurity and are urging federal agencies to improve the sharing of cyber threat information. The U.S. Federal Communications Commission has opened applications for its $200 million Schools and Libraries Cybersecurity Pilot Program, part of the Learn Without Limits initiative. The 3-year program aims to help K-12 schools and libraries cover the cost of cybersecurity services and equipment. It will use general universal service funds to enhance cybersecurity without undermining the success of the E-Rate program, which promotes digital equity. Schools and libraries can apply until November 1st of this year by providing basic information about their cybersecurity needs. Selected participants will later submit more detailed plans. FCC Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel emphasized the growing cyber threats targeting these institutions and hopes the program will identify effective tools to safeguard their broadband networks. The program will also collect data to explore broader use of universal service funds for cybersecurity. Since January 2020, Gray Noise Intelligence has tracked mysterious noise storms, massive waves of spoofed traffic that challenge cybersecurity experts. These sophisticated attacks used advanced techniques like TTL spoofing and OS emulation, complicating detection and blocking efforts. While millions of spoofed IPs target providers like Cogent and Lumen, AWS is notably avoided, suggesting a strategic actor. Though the traffic appears to originate from Brazil, links to Chinese platforms like QQ and WeChat suggest deliberate obfuscation. Despite years of analysis, experts remain uncertain about the true intent behind these events, which may involve covert communications, DDoS attacks, or misconfigurations. Recent storms feature the ASCII string love in ICMP packets, further deepening the mystery. Gray Noise urges security leaders to use adaptive tools and actionable intelligence to address such evolving threats and stay proactive in a rapidly shifting cybersecurity landscape. And if you have any insights on these noise storms, Gray Noise would love to hear from you. A recent scam targets Walmart customers by embedding fake customer service numbers into shared shopping lists on the Walmart website. Victims are tricked into calling a fraudulent call center where scammers claim their accounts were involved in illegal activity and threaten arrest unless money is transferred to a Bitcoin wallet. The scam escalates with demands for personal and financial information. Walmart has been informed of the scam, and users are urged to avoid clicking on suspicious ads and to be cautious when engaging with unfamiliar customer service numbers. CISA has issued a warning about 5 critical vulnerabilities in widely used software, urging organizations to apply patches or discontinue affected products by October 9th. Key vulnerabilities include flaws in Apache Huge Graph Server, Microsoft SQL Server Reporting Services, Windows Task Scheduler, Oracle JDeveloper, and Oracle WebLogic Server, all of which could allow remote attackers to execute arbitrary code or escalate privileges. Immediate action is recommended to mitigate these serious security risks. Craig Newmark, founder of Craigslist, plans to donate $100 million to strengthen U.S. cybersecurity, targeting infrastructure protection and public education on basic cybersecurity measures like password management and software updates. Newmark believes the U.S. is vulnerable to foreign cyberattacks, especially on critical infrastructure, and aims to support those defending it. Part of his donation will fund initiatives like training cybersecurity volunteers and supporting child internet safety. This pledge is part of his broader philanthropic efforts to give away most of his wealth, which has surpassed $400 million since 2015. Coming up after the break, Victoria Sampson, Chief Director at Secure World Foundation, speaks about space security and stability. Stay with us. And now, a word from our sponsor, KnowBe4. It's all connected, and we're not talking conspiracy theories. When it comes to InfoSec tools, effective integrations can make or break your security stack. The same should be true for security awareness training. KnowBe4, provider of the world's largest library of security awareness training, provides a way to integrate your existing security stack tools to help you strengthen your organization's security culture. KnowBe4's Security Coach uses standard APIs to quickly and easily integrate with your existing security products from vendors like Microsoft, CrowdStrike, and Cisco, 35 vendor integrations and counting. Security Coach analyzes your security stack alerts to identify events related to any risky security behavior from your users. Use this information to set up real-time coaching campaigns targeting risky users based on those events from your network, endpoint, identity, or web security vendors. Then coach your users at the moment the risky behavior occurs, with contextual security tips delivered via Microsoft Teams, Slack, or email. Learn more at knowbe4.com/securitycoach. That's knowbe4.com/securitycoach. And we thank KnowBe4 for sponsoring our show. Imagine this. Your primary identity provider goes down, whether it's a cloud outage, network issue, or even a cyber attack. Suddenly, your business grinds to a halt. But what if it didn't have to? Meet Identity Continuity from Strata, the game-changing solution that keeps your business running smoothly no matter what. Whether your cloud IDP crashes or your on-prem system faces a hiccup, Identity Continuity seamlessly shifts authentication to a secondary or even tertiary IDP, automatically and without disruption. Powered by the Mavericks Identity Orchestration Platform, Identity Continuity uses smart health checks to monitor your IDP's availability and instantly activates failover strategies tailored to your needs. When the coast is clear, it's a seamless switch back. No more downtime, no lost revenue, no frustrated customers. Just continuous, secure access to your critical applications every single time. Protect your business from the high costs of IDP outages. With identity continuity from Strata, downtime is a thing of the past. Learn more at strata.io. Keep your business moving even when the unexpected happens. That's strata.io. Victoria Sampson is Chief Director at Secure World Foundation, and she recently spoke with N2K's T-Minus Space Daily podcast host Maria Vermazis about space security and stability.
The Secure World Foundation is a nonprofit that focuses on space sustainability. We promote best practices and norms of behavior to make sure that space is accessible to and usable for all over the long term. So my particular portfolio focuses on the security aspects, which, a lot of things affect sustainability, but happy to talk more through the course of our conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, space security is a phrase that I think it colloquially has a number of different uses and meanings, and sometimes it's not exactly clear what people are talking about. In the context of this conversation, and you are the expert here, how do we define space security exactly?
I mean, that's a really interesting question. And I think it just depends on who you ask. In English, we distinguish between space safety and space security. Space safety are things like spaceflight safety, inadvertent interruptions to your space capabilities, not like space debris and, solar flares and stuff like that. Space security implies that there is a deliberate threat intention to somehow interfere with your space assets. And I say that because in English, because in other languages, especially Romance languages, they don't distinguish between space safety and space security. But we are speaking English, so we shall look at it from the security aspect. So these are things, anything that could somehow deny, disrupt, interfere, somehow get in the way between your space asset and you. So this is either, information coming to or from the satellite, whether at the ground control station or as a user.
So yeah, definitely cybersecurity sounds like it would be wrapped up in that as well when we're talking about space security.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is.
Very cool. And another just point of clarification for me, the term counter space, what do we mean by that as well?
Sure. We use the terminology counter space capabilities because I think, a lot of people used to think, okay, space weapons, what does that mean? And, the implication is, whether Star Wars shooting lasers or more realistically, the idea of putting a weapon up in space that can point down at Earth or other satellites or things of that nature. The issue is, though, that latter aspect isn't really happening. What we're seeing are these sort of capabilities that are dual purpose. That means that they could be being created for completely innocuous, non-offensive reasons, or the same technology could be used in a manner that's meant to be deliberately hostile. And so that's why we say capabilities. And we're talking counter space capabilities. These are things like whether you're going to put a system up in orbit to somehow interfere with another satellite, whether that's to jam it or to take pictures of it or release an object with high velocity to impact it, things like that. Or you have things that are I think this is what a lot of people think of when they think of, space counter space capabilities or, space security issues. Some sort of interceptor launched from a terrestrial point, whether that's in the air or on the ground or an ocean, to aim at a target in space. But then you also have things like electronic warfare, jamming, spoofing, interfering somehow with communication. You have directed energy weapons, lasers, which can be used to blind or dazzle optical imagery. You could be using some sort of electromagnetic pulse to interfere or somehow destroy a satellite. And then finally, there are things like cybersecurity, the idea of releasing cyber weapons to somehow interfere or take out a space communications.
Okay, so that is a fascinating, scary also, but like a fascinating array of different scenarios. And one thing that I've noticed in my discussions with people is I think there is not a lot of understanding of what's a realistic threat. I mean, experts like yourself know, but in the general public, let alone even within sort of the general space world, I'm not sure if people quite understand what is realistically happening. And I'm thinking also of major headlines like, Viasat, that was a major issue in 2022, but also the whole thing with Russian nukes in space did not help add any clarity to the conversation at all. And people were like, okay, how real is that? What does that exactly mean? Isn't that, some people were like, that's been going on for ages. This isn't new. Other people, so it's, where do we even begin to sort of understand, for those of us who are interested in the industry about space, how do we begin to understand realistically where things are at right now, and how do we, and what actually is the signal and what's the noise in the situation?
Right. It's hard because a lot of space gets classified very quickly. And so it's hard to have an open, unclassified conversation about what the actual threats are as well. I think oftentimes some of the concept of the threat is maybe increased a little bit depending upon who is doing it, for geopolitical reasons. And this allows me to put in a plug. I'm contractually obligated to mention Secure World's Global Counterspace Threat Assessment, which is an open source, unclassified analysis of counterspace capabilities for 12 countries across 5 different capabilities that I mentioned earlier. And so if you look at that, we have a lovely thing I call the stoplight chart on our website, swfound.org/counterspace, that looks at these capabilities. And so I think, you can do it different ways. You can say, okay, reversible versus irreversible damage. Something that is reversible, like jamming or, a cyber attack. You do it and it isn't going to permanently destroy or harm the spaces that you're targeting. Those are actually considered to be very usable counter space capabilities, and everyone's doing it. Everyone jams. Absolutely everyone jams. Presumably, most countries that have cyber capabilities, cyber warfare in other realms, they presumably have them in space if they have space capabilities too. That gets very classified very quickly, so it's kind of hard to distinguish. But as you mentioned, for example, in February 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, they released simultaneously an attack against Viasat's ground terminals, a cyber attack. And we thought that was very interesting because, first of all, again, usable counter space capability, but also whenever people think about space security and stability, they think about things up in space, obviously, but the ground targets, they're right there. They're easier to get to, and so that was something that we point out. So something like that. What's less likely, maybe low probability, high impact, are the things that are irreversible, destructive counter space capabilities. And these would be things like, direct descent anti-satellite capability, where you have an interceptor launch from terrestrial Earth to, impact a satellite up in space. No one's ever done that against anyone else's satellite. 4 countries have tested this capability against their own: the United States, Russia, China, and India. But if something like that were to be done, again, against a rival satellite, that could be incredibly escalatory, and that it could invoke a response, bringing conflict from space into Earth. And then things like, you mentioned Russian nukes for anti-satellite. The story was that U.S. intelligence forces believe that Russia is developing some sort of nuclear warhead that would be placed into orbit and used as an anti-satellite capability, in terms of it would explode, and the EMP from the explosion would be used to take out a bunch of satellites at once. That is something that we know will happen, in terms of has been proven during the early part of the Cold War. Both the United States and the then Soviet Union tested nuclear warheads in space. And in fact, there was one that the U.S. did in July 1962, where Starfish Prime, where the warhead was a 1.4 megaton warhead. It took out about a third of the active satellites at that point. Now, granted, this is just a few years after Sputnik, so there weren't that many, but still, you can imagine in this day and age, if you have a nuclear warhead going off in low Earth orbit, which is where most of the satellites that are active now operate, that could be incredibly damaging and, again, very escalatory. So it's just one of those things. I always hate to say, it depends, but it truly just depends in terms of what the counter space capability is. But again, I will point out, we make this point in our counter space document, our counter space threat assessment. Temporary reversible counter space capabilities are being used right now in conflicts, but these are things like jamming and cyber. Irreversible, destructive counter space capabilities have not been used in conflicts yet.
Yeah. No, it depends. Yeah, no, I hate saying that, but I'm smiling, but I'm terrified of that happening. It depends is an honest answer also. So it's as often when speaking to experts like yourself and scientists and different, that's usually the answer that I get from most of my question, which is the valid, honest answer. Speaking of that report there that you're mentioning, the Global Counter Space Capabilities Assessment, so that came out in April of this year, and it's a really, I'll make sure we have links to it in our show notes because people should definitely check it out. There's a really interesting abstract at the beginning that sort of makes the case that more public debate about what's going on in the space domain regarding security. I'm being very broad here because I don't want to. I'd rather you explain this than me. But more public debate and discussion is needed around what's going on here. Is this that things are getting too hawkish? Are things just too militarily focused? I mean, can you dive into that a little more?
Sure. I mean, the reason why we started this counter-space threat assessment 6 years ago was that we would read news stories and hear news stories about things that other countries are doing. Namely, I'm in the U.S., so this would be China and Russia. And it would either be wildly speculative, in terms of what they're doing and what it meant to do, or it would be like, can't say anything, classified, but if you knew, you'd want to do more. And so we said, okay, well, you can't make good information based on guesses. And so we thought, okay, well, what if we were to work towards establishing, what can you find out from an unclassified open source pieces of data? And so that's what we did. So we wanted to contextualize the conversation and, make it more relevant. So we look at when, countries, there are news stories about countries testing capabilities. We say, okay, how does that compare to other countries' capabilities? Is that truly a new thing, or is that something that another country has been doing for decades? Does it fit into where their budget and policy and strategies, if that information is open and available? Does it fit into what they've been saying? With the idea that you can't make good policies without good input. And then in terms of, helping the public fully understand this, I think oftentimes, again, it's very complicated. It gets classified, and people just, jump to the worst conclusion. And sometimes that is relevant. But other times what ends up happening is it creates a situation that is what you were hoping to avoid to begin with. And so our hope is by sharing information about this, that we can help encourage informed debate and allow policymakers to make the best decisions for national and international security stability. I think oftentimes when people talk about threats from a national security perspective, the response is, okay, what sort of technologies and military capabilities can we develop in response? And obviously that's one tool in the toolkit. But another tool that I think can be equally as helpful is diplomacy. There are a lot of multilateral discussions happening at the United Nations and elsewhere, looking at how do you determine what is considered responsible behavior in space? How do you identify irresponsible behavior? And how can you get a commonly understood, not necessarily definition, but global perspective on these sort of things, so that you can identify when people are acting outside of what's considered responsible behavior, and how can you get the patterns of life established? So I think that's one way in which that can be very helpful in handling this. And another way are just unilateral declarations. For example, in April 2022, the United States announced it was committing not to conduct destructive anti-satellite missile tests, largely because of the debris that's created from those issues, from those tests. In November 2021, Russia conducted one of these tests, and it created over 1,600 pieces of trackable debris, of which I want to say, there's maybe 300 still around. So it's dropping, but still, it's still a threat to other operators. It's a threat to allies of Russia. One of the things that really shocked me is when they did the test is that they had cosmonauts on the space station, and they're going to be just as threatened as the astronauts. So I think diplomatic efforts can be helpful, and this commitment not to conduct destructive anti-satellite missile tests that the United States announced 2 years ago has since been joined by 36 other countries. And so, that's another way in which countries can try and make a more stable, predictable space environment. It does not have to be develop a weapon, get a treaty forward. There is a whole spectrum of responses in between those two.
That's Victoria Sampson, Chief Director at Secure World Foundation. For more information, we'll have a link in our show notes. Also, do check out the T- Space Daily podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And now, a word from our sponsor, Cortex. Security teams face a barrage of more security tools, create more complexity, more devices need protection, more specialized focus areas create more silos. The security landscape is changing fast. How can security operations transform to meet current threats? Cortex by Palo Alto Networks consolidates SecOps tools into an integrated platform and helps organizations stop threats at scale with AI, automation, and analytics. Learn more at paloaltonetworks.com/Cortex.
This episode is brought to you by Batiste Dry Shampoo. Whether you're on the go, at the gym, or getting ready for a night out, Batiste has a dry shampoo for you. Refresh with over 10 signature fragrances. Or try Batiste Hint of Color, a tinted dry shampoo that seamlessly blends with your hair. Need an extra boost? Try Batiste Dry Shampoo with added benefits, like volumizing, texturizing, and more. Buy Batiste now, in-store or online at your nearest retailer.
And finally, cybercriminals might want to rethink downloading cracked software, as they're unknowingly exposing themselves to researchers and law enforcement through info-stealer malware. Joseph Cox at 404 Media looks at a recent case where researchers at Hudson Rock uncovered key information on Muchaba and Moshin Raza, two fugitives from the FBI's most wanted list, using data harvested by info-stealers. These malware infections, likely caused by running cracked versions of popular software, capture everything from passwords to browsing histories and even screenshots. The Razas allegedly ran an illegal business selling fake IDs, and the malware logs revealed credentials linked to their operations. Ironically, the criminals are victims of their own trade, falling prey to the very malware they rely on to exploit others. Researchers are leveraging this data flood to unmask identities, proving that sometimes even hackers can't escape their own tactics. Hudson Rock also identified other associates involved, further expanding the case. It's clear, when criminals play with malware, they risk exposing themselves just as much as their targets. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to cyberwire@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K CyberWire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it easy for companies to optimize your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your teams while making your teams smarter. Learn how at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Stokes. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music and sound design by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Our executive editor is Brandon Karp. Simone Petrella is our president. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. And I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.